Hey Mike, told you I'd make you a little video concerning the machine work on the carburetors. This is what they look like when they come back. I've got one butterfly installed here, and I'll show you what it's like to install the other butterfly. These are all, I've got these marked as to which carburetor they go to. So I'm going to put that one up there and bring this over into view. Excuse me. Now then, these are very, very precision made throttle plates, and you can see, you'll be able to see how. Now this won't go in there unless it's in the exact right spot. There's no slop whatsoever on these butterflies, and just slipping it in there does not guarantee this is going to work. All I did was install it, but that's not the same thing as it seating properly. As you can probably tell, you see the ring of light around there. Now then, it takes an awful lot of work to get this thing to seat back in there. The precision is so great or so fine. I'll give you an idea. I've already got this one set in there. Got my screws blanking off the holes here so you don't have any light coming through. Got this hole blanked off so you won't see any light coming through. And this is what it looks like. I got one hole on the side for the set screw right there. I'll blank it off. We have no extraneous light coming in. I'll give you an idea what kind of precision is involved. Those things will hold water. And you notice you don't have any ring of light coming through there. Now the actual butterfly will set about like this when you've got everything adjusted properly, but you can't have that kind of precision unless you can do what I'm doing here. Okay. You understand that part. Another thing that's very, very critical is the angle of dangle on the butterfly on the throttle plate here. It's supposed to be on macro. I don't know why I can't get any decent macro out of this. It is on macro, isn't it? Yeah, it's on macro. Alright, so what we're looking at here are the progression bores. And right there, see these guys? God, this looks like it's out of focus to me. I don't understand. Okay, there we go. Now it's just my eyes. Notice when this is completely closed, but it doesn't idle on the completely closed. It idles right about there, so that progression bore is just barely opening up. I mean, just barely being uncovered. So you got to make sure the butterfly angle, this bevel right here, is precise, so that bore is exactly like halfway open or halfway uncovered when you're setting the idle. On this side, of course, you've got no progression bores, so you don't have to worry about that. I mean, this one that you have is behind the throttle plate. Also, what you're going to run into, these little guys right here, called pre-atomizers. They go in the throat, down inside, and are secured from the outside with bolt and a jam nut. It's the stupidest idea you can ever think of. Alright, so first of all, these things are metal to metal contact. This is purely a mechanical seal. No O-ring, no gasket, nothing. So what you've got to do is screw this thing, screw the jam nut in here, pushing this into the wall tight enough that it's going to seal fuel. Now at the same time you're trying to cram this thing, trying to jam it into the throat of the carburetor and seal up, you've got this nice big circle where almost all of your material is missing. So what you've got is a really weak spot right here. And you've got to be careful enough that you don't collapse this, break it, while you make sure this is jammed up against the inner wall of the throat. And another problem is, of course, these are pot metal, and they will actually shrink. This the dimensions here will shrink, so that when you've got this set and tightened up, and yet over a period of I don't know, years or something, this thing is going to shrink. So you start to loosen up the pre-atomizers, and then when these are loose, fuel just dumps into the throat of the carburetor. In fact, I just received a set of carburetors for evaluation, and they want to know why it wasn't running very well. I said, well, you know, how are your pre-atomizers? And I said, are they tight? He said, well, I don't know. You check it. Well, that's what happens. And these are carburetors that somebody thought they were going to put into service. So those are some of the basics. Trying to think what else. All the just imagine years of being right over the exhaust header, the exhaust manifold, and these carburetors getting cooked, absolutely cooked. So all your mating surfaces are going to need to be machined and made flat. We always put helicoils in here because the threads pull out. Pot metal is not a very good, it doesn't like stress placed on it in terms of threads, so those pull out. We always helicoil those. And we always replace the calibrating sleeve in here. That's a little check valve, brass check valve. And you have to replace those things, because if they don't work, then you don't get any fuel flowing into the accelerator pump assembly, or you have fuel all the time, and when you go to accelerate and you activate the diaphragm here, it just backflows through the check valve. So it has to, the check valve actually has to act as a check valve, and there's a check valve right here that also has to function. And if it dribbles fuel, your accelerator pump, let's see, let me get the other carburetors here. Alright, so this check valve right here, if this doesn't hold fluid, what happens is what you're doing is you got your gas is going to go up in here, and it's going to go into the discharge nozzle and exits out the discharge nozzle, which on this carburetor is, well, interestingly enough, is like in the totally wrong position. This is unbelievable. This thing won't even, looks like it won't even squirt. This is supposed to be sticking out a ways and pointed towards so it'll shoot at the center of the throat. Anyway, what'll happen is if this nozzle right here is not sealing properly, if this check valve is not sealing properly, when you if it's dribbling, if it's allowing fuel to seep past it, what you're going to get is a dribble of fuel here as the vacuum rushes through. As the air rushes through and creates a vacuum, you're getting a little dribble of fuel here. It's going to drip, 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 and that's what we call a rolling mist. It will give you a rough idle. So that has to be corrected, and you also have to adjust your bend this tab, this accelerator pump discharge nozzle, bend it around to where the fuel shoots down the throat of the carburetor like it's supposed to. Choke. The choke mechanism on these carburetors is just evil, just plain evil. Very difficult. The problem with the choke mechanism, of course, is that you have a thin shaft, and what are you going to do? Let's grind a whole bunch of material out of the center of the shaft, and then let's drill some holes in it. And so what you basically have is like this very small section of like about 4 millimeters of metal that's actually holding this in place, and these things actually get bent at this point. And if they get bent, then they don't work smoothly. So this one's in good condition. And remember, these things can be very sloppy here. That's okay, because this is unmetered air right here. Nobody cares about this. All you want to do is be able to close this and get it to where it'll choke the car. Now, where you care, of course, is on the back here, on this side here. Now, these things are so unbelievably loose. I have to wonder if they would even function. I think you can see that and you can hear it. Those are not going to run worth beans. The difference, of course, is dramatic in terms of these shafts here when they're properly bushed, and it's just so precise, just amazing. Another thing is not all the carburetors came with a recess right here on the first barrel to put a quad seal, but they need to have that. Don't know why they didn't put it on the second barrel, but they didn't. Doesn't seem to need it once you have this machine work done properly on the bushings. Trying to think what else was of interest. These plugs, these aluminum plugs, have a tendency to blow out or leak, so you have to make sure they're in good shape and in place, and also have to make sure this crossover pipe is free of gunk. And in certain instances, I found where the factory quite literally forgot to drill the crossover hole into the throat, and had to go pull the plug out, drill it out, and then clean everything out of there to where you have this crossover pipe here. And what that's designed for is when these second barrels fill up with fuel, that fuel is supposed to actually drain and gets drawn into the first barrel and get pulled away. What you're going to find is people who don't drive these cars often enough, or don't accelerate the cars past, let's say, 3,500 RPM to activate the vacuum enough to open up the second barrel. What happens is fuel pools inside here, and depends on the quality of fuel, but this second barrel throttle plate can actually stick in here to the point where you have to take the carbs apart and soak them to get that thing to unstick. And if people let the car sit and without really driving it hard and enjoying the car, then the more likely that's going to happen, and people are going to be unhappy. So let's see how this one looks here. This one looks a little bit dirtier than this one, a little bit more buildup. And okay, that's good for. Well, here's a perfect example of what happens when you don't mount the carburetors properly with the wave washer between the thick rubber gasket and the metal sleeve that goes in there. They neglected to put the wave washer in there, and that metal sleeve drove into the body right here and made a huge dent. This is what it's supposed to look like when the carburetors are properly installed. And of course, this mating surface is warped by now because the wave washer that's supposed to go there acts as a limit stop, so that you can't really tighten down the carburetors too tight and with the potential of breaking things. And you have to look down here, make sure they're not cracked. Well, guess what? Check this out. That guy's cracked. That's what happens when you don't mount these things properly. It's cracked. Amazing. I think you can see that. Amazing. Alright. That's what happens when you don't mount them properly. Or also that will happen when you let the rear motor mounts collapse and the big air log that attaches to the carburetor, big aluminum air log, as it sweeps across the firewall and up towards the air cleaner. Well, that air log actually is about this far off the firewall, and you usually should be able to slip your fingers in underneath the air log to make sure you got proper clearance, because when the motor mounts collapse, that air log sits on the firewall, and the air log and the carburetors then become your motor mounts, and that's another cause for this cracking to take place right here. Somebody just screwed themselves royally because of lack of maintenance. Alright, so I think that is enough. That's why the factory went to this reinforcing boss right here on the later style carburetors. Extra material right there to keep the carburetors from breaking. I mean, they knew they had a problem. They kept fixing it. There's only about 6 or 7 different variations on these carburetors, as they tried to figure out how to make them work properly and keep them from messing up. Like I say, Solex is a French word for crappy carburetor, and Solex is the reason fuel injection was invented, so people could get rid of carburetors. That's about it for right now. I wish you well on having fun with your carburetors. Good luck.